Welcome to another episode of Bledsoe Said So. I'm your host, Ryan Bledsoe. We are joined by Alex, our producer. Give him a little look.
Hello.
We need more on that wall, man. There's not enough on that wall. Look at that again.
We'll fill it up
One more time. Yeah, we gotta swag that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. It's a work in progress. Welcome, everybody. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode where we talked about the initial encounter of my family, to include the Cape Fear River incident, or sometimes known back in the day as the Fayetteville incident. We talked about some of the backlash? Yeah, the backlash that was experienced by my family, the documentary that just really caused a lot of trouble in our lives. And I wanted to sort of pick up from there and go forward and talk about some of the things that followed that, right? So in 2008, when this documentary comes out, right, I'm like 15 years old. I'm in the 10th grade. And I remember vividly what that was like going to school the next day. The night that it came out, we had a party at my Aunt Julie's house. And it was really sweet. It was really like a supportive thing. My Aunt Tammy was there, all their kids, the whole family, we all gathered. And it was a really kind thing of them to say, oh, our brother's going to go on TV. Let's all have a party and watch it. You know what I mean? And I will say admittedly that in the very beginning when we were being told, you know, we're crazy and dealing with the devil and all this stuff, my dad's sisters have always been pretty supportive. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I've never heard a single word from either of them that was like negative or critical. And actually it's quite the opposite. And they're very much supportive. So, I'm very thankful about that. So when our documentary started to come out, basically my Aunt Tammy was like, made these shirts that were really goofy. I have one in my closet. I've showed it on a previous episode, but it was these shirts that were like lime green, and they said, the Fayetteville incident, because that was the name of the episode on the Discovery Channel. And she got us these little alien hats. I probably have one in there somewhere, and just a bunch of other little party favors, like little alien things. And it's a joke, like we never said it's aliens or anything, but it was just like kind of on the nose. We all got together to watch this documentary. And the room through the viewing of the documentary was like you could cut the tension with a knife because of how bad it made us look. And we were all so shocked and so disappointed. And I just remember it being so disappointing. And you could just tell that they were not happy with it. Everybody in the room, and it was just a very surreal experience, right? Like you're like, woo. Do you remember in the Joker movie when he like fantasizes about seeing the character on the TV that he really likes, and then he meets him in real life, and it was obviously it's a rated R psycho thriller action movie, so he kills him. Obviously it's a fantastic version, but it was kind of like that where you were like, we're going to be on the Discovery Channel, and then it comes out and it was just like this major letdown, this major disappointment. It's ironic, right? So I just remember going to school the next day, but I was still proud of my father and my brother, so I wanted to show support, right? And I surely didn't think anybody in the world that I knew would have seen it. I didn't know it was going to be in the newspaper the next day, and I put on that lime green shirt under. I had like a kind of like a Carhartt style jacket, I think it actually was a Carhartt, and so I had that jacket like over the green shirt, and just was thinking it was incognito. You know what I mean? And then I get to school first period, and my teacher is like, saw it. She saw it the night before, and she basically invited, and I took my coat off and put it on my, because I'm hot in class, right? So long story short, she actually saw it the night before and invited me to the front of class to like talk about it to a classroom of 30 students. And I had this dorky green shirt on, and I was like, oh man, in that moment, really, I was like so regretting wearing that to school the next day. And I remember feeling humiliated talking about it, and just it was so humiliating, like having to go in front of class and tell other teenage kids, some of them laughed, some of them, whoa, and it was just a kind of a shocking experience. And then I go to second period, nothing happens, pretty normal. Then I go to third period, it's art. I'm a terrible artist, but for some reason I took it for 3 years. I had friends that I would take it with, and I would just talk the whole time. But yeah, my art teacher, and she's a lovely human being, and it was nothing but just the most positive vibe. But she asked me to stay after class, and I was like, oh, thinking I'm in trouble. And then I stay after class, and she basically breaks out a newspaper that she had of our show being, the Fayetteville incident. And I just remember, I'll never forget, she basically told me how brave my family was for going out and telling our story, because when she was a little girl, she was with her aunt outside somewhere in the woods or something like that. They were just away from other people, and they saw something in the sky that was not right. It was, divine, UFO, orb, something like that. And I'm talking like 40 or 50 years before that. She was, an older lady, like, you know what I mean? So she was talking about when she was a little girl. And she just commended us and was like, I support you guys. I'm so proud of you for getting your story out there. And I was like, oh, well, that was really positive. Go home, tell my mom and dad, But throughout time, for the rest of my high school career, kids would come up to me and they would mock, they would laugh, they would just make comments to me about UFOs and about aliens, and of course my other siblings too. And some of them would come up to me with cell phone videos of orbs, genuinely, and show them to me and be like, what do you think about this? Is this real? Is this like what your daddy saw? I'm like, I don't know, man. Probably, I'm not an expert. But
because had you seen anything at that point?
Absolutely.
On your okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. It started like the first week. My dad comes home. I'm 13, right? And there's a lot of growth from 13 to 15. You're talking like a middle school, barely pubescent kid to like a teenager in high school. There was a lot of maturity difference between the time that it actually began and then, I'm in school. Still not mature, but it's a spectrum, right? So back then it was a big difference in how the kids reacted, how I felt, and how I handled it. You know what I mean? When I was 13, I was so traumatized by this stuff that I had to see a guidance counselor from all of the fighting at home and, all of the strife and people saying my family was crazy. It was so traumatizing that I would go to school and I would just not speak for days. And I guess they put me in like a guidance counselor thing. I'm just saying, I was so young. It was so traumatizing. Like, little children don't know how to handle this stuff that well, so they shut down. By the time I'm in high school, it's a little different, but it still sucked, right? At that point, it's just like bullying. But, yeah, dude, kids would come up to me and they'd be like, I believe you guys. Or kids would talk about us. That was the most, they wouldn't just come up to us, but we would hear it through the grapevine. Like, oh, I was in class the other day and they made a comment about the crazy Bledsoes. You know what I mean? Or like my wife, she's in my sister's grade, just moved there from Florida. And, she's at lunch one day, hasn't even met my sister. And all these kids are telling my wife that, the Bledsoes are this crazy alien family and we were on TV. It was like that. Like, everybody knew about it and they wouldn't always say something to us, but we would always hear about it. We would catch it. We would go home and our aunts and uncles and our family and everybody we knew would be like, don't talk about that. You're crazy. You're dealing with a devil. It's evil. I don't want to hear about it. Jesus didn't die on other planets. It's not real. All that kind of stuff. We would hear that. And it went on for 5 years. I'm in college at this point. My brother Jeremy's in college here in Wilmington. Chris Jr. has moved out. He's in his 20s, by the time I'm in college. He's doing his own thing. Emily's in high school. We're all in completely different phases in life. Whereas when it all started, all four of us kids were in school. We were all at the house. It was just different. As over those 5 years, Jeremy moves out, Junior moves out. I'm staying across town at college. So like we weren't all around each other. It was just a different family environment. And in 2012, we had another encounter that sort of took what was happening to us to the next level. So before I go into this, I want to talk about a little bit more of the landscape of supernatural experiences we were having before this moment in 2012. So from 2007 to 2012, I'm 13 years old all the way up to 18, right? 5 years of darkness. My father always called that the 5 years of darkness because it was so horrible how we were treated, that it was like a really dark period for our family. We weren't really getting any help from anybody. We weren't really receiving any answers. It was very scary, and we weren't fully aware of what was happening to us, and it was just continually happening. I talked earlier about when my dad was, in the orb and what the beings told him. He had the hypnotic regression. His memories came back, and then, going forward, all of his experiences have been conscious. Sure, he has had profound dreams. He has out-of-body experiences and all those kinds of different supernatural ESP type abilities, but for real, like when he would experience entities and orbs and things pertaining to that, it's not like it had to be hypnotic regressed ever again, but he experiences them consciously in real time, right? And actually more things began to happen in our house when his memories were unlocked after that first year. And his connection to the, you could say, the other world, the invisible world, the spirit world, whatever, it was profoundly increased after that hypnotic regression. And he had more of an understanding about what we were dealing with, because it was like a year and a half where you have to understand his perspective. He sees these beings, they give him a few messages, we're here to help you. They talk about like, don't harm life. It's all sacred. All that stuff I talked about in the previous episode, right? And then that was that. He wasn't getting messages. We were just seeing things. We were seeing lights in the sky, 99% of it. I mean, January 8, 2007, the original encounter happens. Within a week, our entire family is like seeing orbs in the sky. It was, to be sure, it was at least within a month. It was very quickly after that original night. It's like it happens and then boom, right away we're seeing stuff, and it never stopped. And the frequency began to increase, right? We began to see things in the house. We began to see shadowy beings run and dive through the wall. My mom and my brother are looking out the window at the same time. I'm sitting on a sofa next to my dad. And like, if you see behind me, this picture of the lady, imagine that's like a window behind me, so I can't see it. It's right behind my head, and it's right behind my dad's head. And my mom and Jeremy like have face-to-face contact with an entity through the window. Things like that. That was all in the first year. Something gently shoved her in the kitchen because my dad was praying she would have experiences. Emily would see an entity in her room. Things like that. They weren't talking to us. They weren't communicating to us. So we were very frightened. We were very scared. What's happening? We don't really know what we're dealing with here. But Dad always maintained, and he reported, that it was angelic. So as a family, we were like, okay, this is positive. It's angelic. It's here to help us. But, what's happening? Nobody wants to talk about it. We're not allowed to bring it up. We need help figuring this out and dealing with this. All kinds of things happened. My mom was seeing entities with the red eyes in the backyard. We have this funny story that we kind of pass around in our family over the last 18 years where my mom was outside one night mowing the grass on a riding mower with a headlight, and my mom would always prefer to like mow grass. If it was her turn, she would do it at night because it's cooler in the evening, so she's like, I don't want to do it in the heat. So she's mowing grass one night. My dad walks out the back door. He checks on her, just see how it's going. He goes back, gets like a cup of coffee or something like that, and then he turns around and he's looking out the back door again, and the lawnmower is driving in the backyard, because my dad, he's a mechanic. He's always ripping machines apart and replacing them, and he had disabled the thing when you get off the seat that it does a kill switch. You know what I mean? So my mom was mowing the grass at night, and she literally, for just a few feet away, one of those little beings was standing there, and it had the red eyes, and she made eye contact with it. She hopped off the lawnmower and sprinted to the house. The thing just is driving on its own and everything. And it was obviously scary in the moment, but my dad always laughs about that story. It was just an incredible sight. One minute he looks, she's mowing the grass, he walks away, he looks back, and the lawnmower is driving itself, and she's sprinting to the house. And she's like, I saw one. She actually tripped and fell down. She was so freaked out, And it was stuff like that was happening in the first 5 years. We're seeing entities face to face. We're having these encounters. Stuff's getting knocked over in the night. You could describe it as like poltergeist activity. I don't mean in a negative connotation. I just mean, stuff falls off the shelf, light bulbs get unscrewed. There's one time we're having dinner, and we had like 3 dogs at the time. We had 3 dogs. And my mom is kind of like very OCD. Like when we would eat dinner, it's like, put the dogs outside. We live out in the country. So it's like, put them outside. They were inside and outside dogs, right? So she's like, put the dogs outside. I don't want them up under me while I'm eating. So it's like, okay. One of us takes the dog out, shuts the back door, right? Go sit down. We're eating for a few minutes. The dog walks right back up to the table. And it's like, what the heck? Take the dog out again. Shut the door. That was weird. Go sit down. A few minutes go by. Dog comes back to the table. And we're like, how is this happening? We had this back porch light that you see them a lot on houses where it's like there's a light bulb inside of a glass like fixture that looks like a lantern or a street post. You know what I'm talking about? And you have to like kind of unscrew the thing to like actually put the light bulb in and screw it in. We go to take the dog out again, like the final time after it had come inside 3 times somehow. And the light bulb was unscrewed in that glass fixture. Well, we had the back patio light on, and we go out there. We're all the way on the other side of the house in the kitchen eating dinner, while that was going on. And like the light bulb was unscrewed. So we're like, whoa, how that can't happen. So stuff like that continued to happen over 5 years. Really weird things, really bizarre supernatural interference and entities and orbs, all the time. I remember being like 14, 13, something like that. And I would see them one night. And then, I would go out every night with Dad. He was so desperate for us to keep seeing and for him to keep seeing, He's still like that. Every time we skywatch, he's still like that. He's still out there every night. It never went away, right? It's this obsession to continue. It's like a inculcation, It's like this need to continue to see the phenomenon. But I remember as a child, there was like a 2-month period where I didn't see an orb. And I remember being scared I would never see one again. That is just an example of the frequency of supernatural experiences that we had that continued to happen. The sheer volume of things that we were experiencing on the regular. Seeing orbs in the sky, all that. So meanwhile, when we went to the Cape Fear River, when my dad and my brother, they saw all that stuff. They came home. All the events of that night happen. The entities, they telepathically communicate with him. My dad's taken for 4 hours. He finally has those memories uncovered a year and a half later. The experiences continue to increase in intensity. Everyone's shaming us, criticizing us, mocking us, reviling us. I was in the room when a pastor was trying to exorcise the devil out of my father with holy oil. In Protestant Christianity, you don't use holy water, you use oil. But it's the same thing, right? You pray over it, and it's this anointing oil. He was like, putting it on my dad, trying to be praying at him, and my dad's like obviously very upset. It was just stuff like that was happening. Around 2009, I'm still in the 10th grade at this point, but it's like... Actually, I might have been I think it was the summer between 10th and the 11th grade, if I remember correctly. I remember being home from school. I was in my pajamas, and I was playing Fallout 3 during the day. And I just remember it was like I wasn't in school for a while. I'm almost positive it was during summer. Doesn't really matter. It was a long time ago. But there was a ring at the door. I go and I open the door, and it's this really tall guy with white hair who tells me he's from NASA, and he has this lanyard on his neck with like this like a lapel thing, like a little laminate sleeve, so that you could print like a name tag and credentials. It's like, they wear them at TSA. They, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like so you can pass through facilities, like you can be identified. It wasn't just a name tag; it had all kinds of shit on it, like press corps with NASA and all this stuff, right? So I was like, oh wow, this is serious. And he's like, I drove 12 hours from Cape Canaveral. I was looking for the Bledsoe house. I was hoping to speak with Chris Bledsoe. Is this his house? I was like, yes, sir, it is. I go and I get my mom. Mom, somebody from NASA's here. She's like, oh, man, call your dad. And Dad gets there within the hour or so. And then for the rest of his life, Hal's life, From 2009 to 2019, when he unfortunately passed away, he stayed in our life. And that was our first overt interaction with someone from the government. I had already explained that when the documentary was being made, there were covert people in intelligence agencies. We didn't know that. That was told to us by these intelligence agencies many years later, right? They didn't come and they're like, I'm with the CIA. They're like, no, we're with MUFON. We're doing a Discovery Channel thing, and they were pumping us up like they were going to make us heroes who would be vindicated before the world and made to look like, we're helping bring truth to the world. And then they spun it and they framed us as liars, right? We later found out they were CIA. So 2009, when Hal comes, this was our first time that someone overtly came and they're like, hey, I'm from the U.S. government. We're here to talk to you. And he was really nice. He didn't have any threats or anything weird like that, but he was trying to debunk us, and that was covert. So he would like buddy us up, and his role, which he actually details in his own book. He worked in Project Blue Book in the 1960s. Was basically this program. It was like a joint operation with NASA and the Air Force to basically like debunk UFOs, get evidence of it, and or debunk it. It was like an actual government program. So throughout the 60s and onward, basically like when people would report having UFOs, the Blue Book people would come and they would like debunk it, right? So they had this whole protocol that he details in one of his own books. I can't remember which one, but he has like 15 books by the time he died. But I read it. He would give us every copy as presents. He would sign them. And he came to our house, dozens and dozens of times over the next 11 years he was in our life. And he even later told us this before he died. But even in his own book, he wrote about his protocol and he told us this. But he was sent by NASA basically to debunk our story. And over time, he realized he couldn't. And he fell in love with our family. And he realized we were legitimate and something was really happening. And, so for a long time we did feel like he was very helpful to our family. Like, wow, this was the first time we felt like someone was taking us seriously. He was really a nice guy. And I think it tugged on his heartstrings seeing after all he realized he couldn't debunk us. He saw how we were treated as a family and how wonderful of a family we are, and he wanted to help us. So he would just come and he would bring us presents and he would bring us gifts, and he was like really encouraging to us. And he drove all the way from Cape Canaveral just to go to Emily's college graduation. He would drive for Dad's birthday parties, sometimes like Thanksgiving. He would just spend holidays with us, and then he would just start bringing his wife, and they were really nice people. So anyway, that happened before 2012, right? So it was just a very confusing period of a lot going on. So we always call it the 5 years of darkness. So in 2012, I'm at the second semester of my freshman year of college. I'm 18 years old. And I'm on Easter break, right? So I'm saying these facts because it helps me like anchor myself to the events of the story, right? Just getting those little details. But I remember very soon after that, our semester was ending, and then it was like I was home for the summer, and then more things began to happen, and Dad and I went to conferences and then talked about the story, which I'm about to tell, and then it just ramped up from there. But anyway, so Easter of 2012, my sister, that Friday, Good Friday, my sister comes home from school and she's really upset because someone had been bullying her. I think she was a freshman in high school at this point. Someone had been bullying her about the alien thing. And my dad was very frustrated. He was just thinking to himself, I'm tired of this. I don't want my children to suffer from this anymore. They're not letting me photograph them. I've tried, hundreds of times, and it's true. When Dad would photograph orbs, it would destroy his cameras. It would like melt the software of it. He had to throw away like 2 cameras or SD cards, or it would fry the SD cards. Sometimes not the camera, but the card. But both have happened, right? So he tried and tried and tried to record them and photograph them. We would have groups come. sometimes small groups of people that reached out on Facebook or whatever. People would camp in our yard in tents because they saw it on TV and they wanted to come over. I mean, he would really just let anybody in the world. Okay, anybody who wrote, can I come? Yeah, sure. You know, it'd be a school night for us, and it's like, all right, we got to clean the house. We got company. It's like there's 20 people, and they're setting up tents in our yard. You know, it was like that for a while. And we would see orbs with crowds like that back in the day. People, faces I can't even remember because it was so long ago and I was a child and it happened so frequently. It was over the course of many years. It was hundreds of people up until a point now. It's been, you know, many thousands of people that we've skywatched with, and they've seen orbs. So anyway, my sister comes home from school crying. My dad's really disturbed about it, and he that night he goes out to the sky and he yells to the sky, basically, thank you for healing me of my Crohn's disease. But I've had enough. I don't want anything to do with this ever again. Leave me alone. You're not letting me photograph you. You're not, you know, helping me. So thanks for the healing, but I'm done with this. I don't want to see this ever again. Just leave my life alone. And the next night, Saturday night at 3 a.m, this booming masculine voice says, arise. And, you know, my dad awakes, and it instructs him to get dressed. And he basically gets dressed, and it instructs him to go outside. He goes outside. It instructs him to like walk out into the backyard, and then there's these beings there. There's these 3 beings. It's the same ones that were like on the craft, the orb, whatever you want to call it, the night of the Cape Fear River. The really tall, like 7 or 8 foot ones, you know. There's 3 of them. And he always told me that when he came face to face with them again, that it felt like brothers or like family. This very familiar feeling like they were brothers and like that they were, you know, part of a family unit together. He felt very comfortable. He wasn't like scared or anything like that anymore since the first encounter. And they're basically like, you know, follow us. And they hand him this thing that my father always describes as, it's like if you imagine a chihuahua. This is how he would tell me when I was younger. If you imagine, because we had chihuahuas. That was always a dog we had, so it was just an easy reference. But he was like, if you have a hairless chihuahua and it's like you remove the legs, the tail, the head, and you just have the little torso. There's no arms, no legs, no face, no tail. It's just like a little fleshy thing about that size and shape. And it has spikes all around it. And they're like, hold this. This is your burden. Don't lose this. And he's holding it, and it's like gnashing at him. It's pricking him. And he's like, ugh. You know, it's like, feels really weird, and it's kind of hurting him. And they instruct him to like walk through the backyard with it. And he walks around the corner. I say corner because I described on the last episode that we had this 6-acre yard, right? And it was kind of like a U shape. And the long, like outside part of the U, if you imagine our yard, that was grass. And that was, you know, 2 houses, my grandma's and mine. And if you imagine the internal part of a U, like the strip that's kind of like rectangular, it was forest. It was really thick forest. And that separated the backyard of my house and my grandma and grandpa's house. So he walks out of our house, he kind of walks around the forest and then out behind my grandpa's house with this thing that's like gnashing at him. And he's like, ooh, it's like hurting him and it's kind of freaking him out. And he gets to the kennel of those hunting hounds. And he throws it in there and he shuts the gate. He turns around and he sees this bull, a really big bull. It's ethereal or ghost-like. It's non-corporeal. And it charges through him. He feels this powerful gust of wind in addition to the bull like running at him. The wind knocks him on his back, and the bull is like jumping over his head. And as he's looking up at it, he can see the stars inside of it. So was he seeing through it and seeing the stars in the night sky? Were there stars inside of this ghostly bull? He's not sure, but he knows that when he was looking at it, he could see all the stars. It was see-through, right? And he rolls over to kind of prop himself back up. So he's kind of on his hands and knees. And by the time he gets to that point and he looks up, there is a lady. She looks as if she's in about her 30s. She has blonde hair and blue eyes and a white gown from her neck all the way down to her feet, and she's barefoot. He said she's about 4 foot tall. She was short, but she was hovering 4 or 5 feet off the ground. So not even that high, really, 3 or 4 feet. Because by the time he's like on his hands and knees trying to prop himself up, her feet were at his face, and he's like looking up at her. Kind of like when you're being knighted, you know what I mean? And you're looking up and you're on your knee, and it was sort of like that kind of scene. Like he's looking up at her and she's floating above, his face. And she says, "You know why I'm here? I'm Hathor, but I go by many names across many cultures." And she said, Amun-Ra is the hidden one. And that this story is his burden. He has to keep this burden. He has to do his job of telling his story to the world. And there is a dark group in power who is controlling humanity, and they worship the dark force. And she said that this dark group is using biblical scripture, like the book of Revelation, to script end-time prophecy into our reality to force a cataclysm, or you could say the eschaton, right? The theological idea of like the end of the world. That's what this dark group is trying to do. But she said the apocalypse truly is not the end, but it's a new beginning, and it is to reveal that which is hidden, the hidden knowledge. And she said that she is the divine feminine, that she is the mother of all creation, and she is the secret missing part of the Holy Trinity. That it's not the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but it's the Father, the Son, and the Mother, and she is the Holy Spirit. She said she's the comforter, that she is the manifestation of love and the creator of the universe, that she's been she actually said she's been the manifestation of love since all of time and all of creation, like since before time and all of creation. Like she's always existed. She's eternal. And that we are approaching the age of Aquarius, which, this has been a concept for a very long time. We didn't know about this. We were Pentecostal Christians. We didn't know about any of this. It was all very shocking information, right? I definitely experienced some sort of existential shock when I heard this for the first time 2 weeks later. But she said that the beings that we have experienced belong to her, that they are a part of her and they serve her. She's the Queen of Heaven. And she said really a lot of things. I mean, we have like an hour-long episode where I'm reading just part of the hypnotic regression. It's hard to take an hour of what she said and condense it into, a really quick little moment. But she said that the earth is a being that is like a very advanced form of consciousness. It's totally alive, and it's a system. It's like an enclosed system. And it's like a terrarium. And that these beings, like, are the guardians of this realm, and that it's a perilous journey, a perilous realm where the soul comes on a journey. And that when we die, we go into an orb and become as they are. We become like them, that we never truly die, and that we are always surrounded and supported by our loved ones, our family, our friends, angels. They're always around us, guiding us from the other side, that they never truly leave us. And that this world is perilous. It's suffering. And she said she weeps for the suffering of humanity, and she is here to comfort us, and we can call on her and she helps us and blesses us. But that Dad has to go and tell his story of not only his experience with the other beings, but of her, because it will change the world. She said if he didn't tell his story, that he would be like Joel the Watchman. She gave him that image in his head of the biblical story of Joel the Watchman. If you know that story, he was supposed to, alert his people when enemies were coming to to kill them. And he didn't, and they were all killed. So he had blood on his hands. He was guilty because he didn't warn them, right? So she said, you'll be like Joel the Watchman if you don't tell your story. You'll be guilty and you'll have blood on your hands from all the lives and souls lost who didn't have, the opportunity to hear the truth. And she said that she would assist us in doing this and that she would always protect us and that she would bring people on our path to help us and that she would provide cameras and witnesses to help us get our story out to the world when the time was right. She said there's going to be an alignment. When the red star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn in the constellation Leo, that there would be a new knowledge. That it would be like the return of the knowledge of God. That we would basically evolve into the next level of consciousness, whatever that looks like. That it's the age of Aquarius, right? That we're going to shift into a completely new age. And the apocalypse doesn't mean the end. It's just to reveal that knowledge. It's not new knowledge, it's old knowledge, but to us it's new because we've forgotten the ways of old. And we could peel back the onion on Atlantis and what that is and what that's all about. That there were precursor forms of humankind that had a lot more advancements, you could say, in technology and consciousness and things like that. This isn't new. This is cyclical. This happens over and over, probably on a 26,000-year cycle, where new forms of humankind come here. But they come here and it evolves to a certain level, and then there's some sort of event where it's like on to the next one. But that's my speculation, right? But she said that it would, be a new knowledge when this alignment happens. She never gave a date. That's very important. She never gave a date. She only said an alignment. And that's kind of the gist of a lot of the things that she said. And then we just recently did another episode. Would you mind finding that for me so we could reference that? So for people who are hearing this for the first time, they could go back and they could kind of listen to that and get the full transcript of some of the things my dad described that she was telling him, right? Because I wasn't there firsthand. It's a lot of information. But that's kind of a lot of the important parts. She said that they would intervene when the suffering of humanity becomes far too great, that they would not let us suffer too much more than we can bear.
The lady regression was episode 185.
185. So if you want to hear the full scope of the things that she told my dad, check out 185. And then he bargained with her, and he was just basically like, I'll do it if you protect my family. And she said, yeah, you and your family and your friends and anyone in your circle who helps you with this mission will be protected. And that was that. So that was Easter 2012, right? 2 weeks go by before he even told me. I was the first person he told because I was always the one coming to him and asking for information, asking for answers. I really wanted to know. I wanted to figure it out more than anybody. And I remember being blown away. And of course I believed him, but it was a shock to me because I was a fundamental Pentecostal Christian, and I had never heard of, this holy lady. I'd never heard of the Holy Mother or the Divine Feminine. I didn't know how to handle it. It was really, truly shocking at 18 years old to have my paradigm flipped in that way. And I'd already been going through that for 5 years, constantly seeing supernatural beings. But I was like, well, it could still be biblical 100%. Like you find a way to justify protecting your belief system so that your consciousness doesn't shatter, right? So I just remember always flipping through the Bible over those 5 years and trying to figure out, what's happening to me. And then the lady comes and just blows all that open, and she basically talks about how she's, the Divine Feminine, the Age of Aquarius. She shows the pyramids, the Sphinx, and all this Egyptian stuff. Amun-Ra's the Hidden One. It was all completely new concepts to me. She talks a little bit about reincarnation with the whole when you die, you become as they are, and you come here on a journey. And, it was just all kinds of change to my belief system that I didn't know how to process it, but I knew it was real. I knew he was telling me the truth because I had seen things and experienced things for myself. So it was like, it was almost weird, like, okay, I accept this, but I don't understand it, and I don't know what to think of it, but, you know, I've got to figure this out. So shortly after that, really shortly after that, actually, probably within a month, Dad and I go to Asheville, North Carolina, because he got invited to do a MUFON conference with like 50 to 70 people, like a real small one. And I think I was on summer break at this point, or at least spring break in college. So like I could afford to just drive 6 hours away from home and go on a trip with my dad. Or 4 hours, I guess. It's 6 hours from Wilmington, but 4 hours from Fayetteville, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'll go with you. And we go to this MUFON conference, and he like is only wanting to talk about the lady. And he's in front of the crowd, and he starts to tell them, something recently happened to me that I want to talk about. And I, basically saw a lady, and the crowd's like, boo, they're heckling him and like kind of really being horrible. And my dad starts crying. He starts crying. And it was almost like he went into a trance, dude. And he said something like, in September, there's going to be an earthquake of an 8.0 magnitude or 7.0 or something like that off the coast of Baja between California and Mexico. Sure enough, that ended up happening many months later. It just so happened that Dr. Diana Pasolka was at that conference, and she heard Dad talk about the lady. And actually, she told us this, and it just so happened that she arranged that conference and invited us there because she had been covertly studying us and wanted us to go so she could have an excuse to meet us. And we became fast friends, and she really helped us sort of unpack the lady from a Catholic perspective, which is very limited in scope. It's not the whole story. It's not complete. But there's a lot to learn there, right? When you understand how much they're into the lady and how they revere her. She was teaching us about like the Lady of Fatima, which we never heard of. We're Pentecostal and Baptist Christians in North Carolina. What is Fatima? I don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? That was our position. And she's explaining to us that this is something that has actually in modern and recent times appeared to people many times. And we're like, whoa, okay, maybe we're not that crazy. Maybe there's something to this kind of thing. Somehow or another, probably because of that and probably because of just whoever was there in the crowd, word got around, and the CIA and more people from NASA and people in Army intelligence, naval intelligence, Air Force, every agency you can think of, NRO, which is like a joint operation between the CIA, the Air Force, and the Navy. It goes on and on. NSA, from that point forward, people from these agencies were starting to swarm us to get to the bottom of our story and find out what these beings want from us and what they're communicating to us. And a year later, 2013, my dad sees her again. But this time, he's somewhere in a desert, walking through the sand, and he sees her on a throne, and he sees the depiction of like how you see Hathor with the headdress, and it was like etched into this throne, and he's not sure if he was physically there or if it was some sort of dimensional thing where it's like I don't know how to describe it, but like it's just like all of a sudden he's there, you know what I mean? And she speaks to him, and it was just really crazy, Shortly after that, someone comes from the Department of Defense by the name of Timothy Taylor, and he's with the NRO. So that means he's with NASA, he's with the Air Force, he's with the CIA, he's with, he had these little badges for Area 51, and he basically tells us that he was sent by his superior to study our family so that he could have more of a religious and spiritual understanding of the phenomenon. And that they knew everything we were experiencing and talking about was true. And it was the real version of the UFO phenomenon. And the people in the government and in the military, they're not experiencing this thing. That's why they come to Chris Bledsoe. That's why these agencies swarm Chris Bledsoe, because they are not experiencing these things naturally. And when they do, they come to us and they, want answers on how to deal with it. That's how it's always been this whole time. But so they're trying to study, right? They're trying to find answers. That's why it's in their interest to, what's the next best thing? Well, basically mass surveil U.S. citizens through organizations like MUFON and collect all of the organic reports that are coming in from average everyday people who are saying they see something, and they're sifting through those and they're weeding out the real ones. Or, people that are online, they're posting it on social media, wherever. They're sifting through those, and they're really desperately trying to find and keep tabs on the real experiences of the phenomenon. There's Pentagon programs dedicated to this, right? And they swarmed us. And Tim Taylor was basically, we know that the lady is very real, that she's a sacred being that has been revered for millennia, and that even in intelligence community like NASA or NRO, even in those circles, she's revered, and that it's a heavily protected secret. And he showed us an NRO patch with this mystical lady with a trident and a flame in her hand, like she's a goddess, and he was explaining that she's the goddess. And they wanted to know what she wants for humanity. And my dad actually had to write down his messages from her, type them up. And he gave them to Tim, and he took them to the Pentagon. And then he took them to Camp David, and he briefed President Barack Obama at the time. This was 2013. He briefed President Barack Obama on our family and what the message was from the lady, and he sent us a seal in the mail, a stamp, the presidential seal from President Barack Obama. So we went from being in this 5 years of darkness and seeing thousands and thousands of beings in the form of orbs or actually manifest entities running around, shadows diving through the wall, stuff like that, to, in 2012, seeing this lady and boom, being swarmed by the intelligence communities, the Department of Defense, all that stuff. So it ramped up really quickly. And my dad would do interviews for a while. He would entertain doing, radio shows. Podcasts weren't really super popular back then. And he would do interviews. He would let people come and interview him in person. By that point, he was in about a dozen books. Maybe not big books, but he was in books. There's no telling how many books my dad has written about it now. I have no clue. But he was always open about his experiences to whoever would ask, anybody. It doesn't matter who. He still is that way. And for a time, these people in these different intelligence agencies became so heavily invested in us and interested in us that they really looked into us, was around us a lot, asked us all these questions. We would go to mutual events, and he didn't really talk that much publicly for a while. It was many years. Many years. He kind of went dark to the public. And the government interest ramped up and ramped up and ramped up. Somewhere between 2009 and 2012, I can't remember exactly, but my dad came down with rheumatoid arthritis, actually, that got very severe around 2016, 2017. It started to get really severe where he was becoming crippled, and they started him on a chemotherapy treatment. It was a pill that he had to take, and all these, he had injections, he had steroids, he had chemotherapy. It was really bad. This is before you knew him, right? And he was crippled. Got so bad where he had to walk with a cane. He couldn't button his pants. He couldn't tie his shoes. I mean, he was really frail. osteoarthritis, like he could sit down and fracture his spine kind of thing. And we were all worried. He was like, I'm not going to be here much longer. I'm not going to make it another 10 years. We're like, don't talk like that. Like, he was really sick. By 2019, he was extremely sick. He was at that point that I was just describing, where he was just like feeling like he wasn't going to live much longer. He was starting to talk about writing a will, and we're like, Dad, don't talk like that. We don't like that. And he was just really not speaking publicly much at all. He had too much sickness to deal with. And Easter of 2019, from 2012 to 2019, every Easter my dad would have some profound orb experience, right? Easter of 2019, he's kind of disappointed because nothing shows. It's really cloudy and rainy and nasty. So he doesn't really have the opportunity to go outside Sunday night. So instead he goes out Monday night. He's like, well, maybe it'll happen tonight, right? And he goes out to the pier, because my dad lives on a small pond, right? So he walks out on the pier right in his backyard, and he sees this really big orange basketball-sized orb come from over the forest to the backside of my dad's property. It's like you walk out the back door, immediately there's a pond. It's maybe like 50 yards across. It's not very big. And then there's forest on the other side, right? So over that forest, this big basketball-sized orange orb appears right over the trees, and it slowly hovers down in front of the tree. It's very slow. It's not like up in the sky, a quick blink. It's like very close, right? That's like 50 yards. Appears over the trees, comes out in front of them, slowly goes down, and it hovers very slowly right over the water. And it's just over the water. And my dad's looking at it, and he's like freaking out. He pulls out his phone, and he is in so much shock. He thinks he's recording for 18 minutes. He dropped to his knees. He was so like in awe of what was happening, and like he couldn't breathe. He was gasping. It was like the energy from this thing was electric. It was making his body shake. He was so awestruck by how close and how massive this orb was, right? And it starts to vibrate. Within that 18-minute period that he thought he was recording, it starts to vibrate, and it starts moving up and down in a straight line at about a diameter of 10 feet. And it starts going really fast, like, those fans that you spin and it like writes a laser message in it? It was kind of like that. It starts going so fast that a form begins to project from it, and it was this glowing being. It didn't have any facial features, but it had a head, arms, a leg. It was just like a fully manifested being of light. I forgot to mention, this is important. I forgot to mention that when my dad saw the lady, those 3 7 to 8 foot tall beings that took him to see the lady, when he saw them the second time in 2013, they removed their physical form, and they were just pure glowing light. And they sang in a heavenly language. That it wasn't human, but when he heard it, it made him weep, and it like vibrated his soul, and it was like pure love, and it was like a heavenly angelic chorus that they would communicate. Anyway, so in 2019, this being is like that. It's like fully just glowing of light. And it tells my father that he had passed the test, that he didn't change his story ever, that he kept it about God, and that because he did so, that he would be rewarded, and that he would be provided with cameras and witnesses to help him get his story to the world. And that his children and his children's children would be blessed, that his future generations would be blessed, because he carried on his mission and he never changed or never wavered about God. And he basically said, start going public, warn the people, hard times are coming. It was just a few months later, COVID hit, right? Dad didn't know. He was just like, oh my God, I got to get out. So it was shortly after that, Easter of 2019, that he went public for the first time ever again. And it was actually on Jimmy Church's show. I think it's Fade to Black. I know that show, but I think he went on Fade to Black. I don't know if that's what he was doing back then or if it was a different program, but I know he did it with Jimmy Church. He went public for the first time in years, and he starts talking about this, right? So it said to warn the people, trouble's coming. The biblical period that we understand to be the tribulation is about to begin. Well, if you do the math on that, and you look into the biblical period of the tribulation, it's roughly 7.5 years. In the Bible, it says X number of months. I'm not a mathematician here. I can't count that fast, and I don't remember it word for word. But if you count up the months that it says that there's this tribulatory period, it's 7.5 years, roughly. Well, crazy, because that goes into 2026, right? And he basically said that we're going to help you get undeniable proof to share with the world, and that you'll be successful. Go keep talking. Go public. And it basically, Dad pulls out he had his phone, but he looks at it and he sees he's not recording, right? And he's like, oh crap. And he hits record, and then it dims down into an orb. And then he gets like another 9 minutes of footage of just that orb, the original orb, the big orange one that's over the water. And it's just like kind of pulsing, and then it floats away. So he was in so much shock. He thought he was recording it, but you know what I'm saying? You've been there. You see a streak in the sky, and you're like, you couldn't record it in time because you're so dumbstruck by what you just saw. It was like that for 18 minutes. And then he notices, oh man, I'm not recording. And he actually hits the button, and then it dims down to a normal orb. The next day, he told me about it right away. He was like, the next weekend. I was home the next weekend. And he tells me about it. He's like, I had the craziest experience last weekend of Easter. I'm just still processing it. I haven't talked about it with anybody. I'm like, what happened, Dad? He tells me all that. And the being, and, warn the people, trouble's coming. The tribulation's about to begin. He passed the test, that he kept it about God. And I said, well, Dad, what was his name? Did you get an impression? And he was like, I think it was Michael. I'm not sure, but that's the feeling that I get. Well, now he thinks it was an aspect of the lady. When you really understand the orbs, they're all just fractals of God. You could in some way think about it as a holographic projection of God, but not in a technology way, but in the scientific way that a small piece of this data contains the information of the whole. They're all fractals of God, these beings, these higher order beings. And really, we all are too, right? It's just orders of emanation throughout dimensions. But, so that was just to summarize, we had the initial encounter in 2007, right? Documentary, all that stuff. Talked about it in the last episode, in the beginning of this one. Then we had the lady, the 5 years leading up to the lady. And so much happened in that time that I can't even begin to, at one point between 2012 and 2019, actually at many points, people from intelligence agencies were giving us death threats. We're trying to lock us into bad movie deals to change our story, to make it about reptilians and really dark bullcrap. Trying to convince Dad, all people from intelligence communities, by the way, they were trying to convince Dad to, feel like a fool because he's religious and he's a Jesus freak and he's talking about God, and it's really about reptilians and it's really about this dark UFO agenda. They did all they could. Not all, but a lot of them, most of them really, to try to convince Dad that, it was this dark agenda, and he never wavered. He would get frustrated, like, you're not going to tell me what I experienced, kind of thing. Like, he would never back down, and he never wavered, and he kept it about God. And I'm just making that connection now. I never really thought about it, because when things are happening in real time, you're not connecting all the pieces. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of see it as you're looking back, but all of that was going on just before 2019. And then boom, the being appears and it says, you passed the test. Well, I guess we were being tested by dark forces for many years to change our story to be about the alien lie. Forgot to mention, by the way, forgive me, it's a lot to talk about 18 years of a story in a linear order and have every detail just on deck. I'm recounting different areas of my life simultaneously. Another one of the things that the lady said that was extremely important, if not one of the most important bits of information, was that the dark forces, not only are they trying to script the book of Revelations to force a cataclysm, but they're also going to commit a great deception on the people to try to make this happen. And that deception will be that there is no God, there is no spirit, there is no soul, that It's aliens. That's the lie. That's sort of the message of the dark force. That's why this alien agenda is so propped up. That's why people who talk about aliens can just waltz onto Joe Rogan or whatever program they want, and they get all the media coverage. And then the Bledsoes out here talking about space angels. People for the longest time didn't want to play ball with us, right? Because we're suppressed. We're locked in a corner by the powers that be. And the people spreading the lie just get to go sip tea with all the who's who of the world and get to share their bull crap to the masses. It's a great deception. It's a multi-generational, very complex psyop. It's demonic. The alien narrative that's being perpetrated. It comes from Aleister Crowley and Scientology and very dark occult things. I'm going to do an episode on that sometime in the next month or two, because we kind of have our next several topics slated that we really are excited about getting into. But I fully intend to do an episode really going into the dark occult roots of the modern alien narrative, because the Bledsoes don't see aliens. We never said that. It's angelic beings, right? She said that when the last soul of this realm stops believing in God, that we would be trapped here in an eternal hell. And that is the goal of the dark force. But that it will never happen. I want to also say, I'm talking about the 2012 experience with the lady, right? Not the 2019 one. She said that we would be trapped here in an eternal hell when all souls stop believing in God, but that it will never happen, because as it is written, so shall it be. It was written thousands of years ago that the light would win, and that they will only let the suffering of humanity go so far before, the light steps in and intervenes. Whether that means the story spreads and people, hit this level of critical mass spreads around the world, where a profound number of spiritual awakenings occur and we decide to change our minds and go a different path and not let the dark forces and the rulers of the world, own us anymore. Or if the light actually intervenes through orbs, through, mass sightings. I don't fully know, but I know that in some way on the cosmic scale of things, that they are intervening from behind the scenes to make sure that the dark force doesn't win, and that they will not be allowed to win. That there has been a period where their deception has been able to go on, but in this turn of the new age, that it's going to be, as it is written, so shall it be. The light will win, and the dark force will be rooted out. And a curse will fall on those who are suppressing the light, and on their families too. And it's not too late to change the road you're on, right? I'm on the team of the light, and I feel sorry for those who aren't. It's a game you can't win. You can't beat the light. But so then, between that and our whole paradigm being shifted, having a deeper understanding of these beings and what they really are, and seeing even more entities and way more orbs, and then starting to attract crowds, and then 2019 having that other experience, and then past that it gets even crazier. 2 years later I started the podcast because Alex, this young guy behind the camera, we start working together, and he starts telling me, I'm kind of catching him up on the cliff notes of the story. We're hanging out. I'm telling him things, and he's just got this look in his eye that's like, dude, you got to start a podcast. You got to get this out there. You got to talk about this. And I didn't listen to podcasts really. I had no concept of really how popular they were, how realistic it was. I was like, I don't know, man. That's not really my thing. I'm not really into it, Maybe it's a cool idea to get it out in some way, but also I was scared because we had received death threats from people in intelligence communities. I was like, I don't know. Years go by, and then we're just like, let's go. Let's take off. Let's do this. And it completely shifted the paradigm to where now the publishing of our story is completely in our hands. So many amazing things have happened since we started this podcast. And I think that it has caused ripples to reverberate throughout the whole world. people in the highest levels of Hollywood, people in the highest levels in the government, the Department of Defense, other intelligence agencies, artists, people in Lockheed Martin, NASA, the CIA, every area of the freaking planet that you could think of, the music industry, the metal industry, which is I love, so that's a big deal to me. Voice actors for video games, anime. Shout out Mela, she just left my house today. Every like little avenue or subculture or achievable credential in this world that you can think of, someone from that realm has heard this podcast. It has reached very far places across this earth. And I don't mean to millions of people, but I mean there's a level of intensity of people that are paying attention to this story and know what's what. Does that make sense? It does? They can't see you shake your head. You want to show them you shaking your head or say yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That does make sense. It's gotten everywhere, right? Shortly after that, Dad put out his book, which had huge waves. And now we're at the point where just a few days ago, Alex and I were out on the beach with 400 people having a mass skywatch, a mass sighting event, seeing anywhere easily between 200 to 300 orbs over a period of 3 hours, where at a constant rate over a period of 3 hours, over and over and over, the whole time, with maybe little 15-minute breaks here and there or less. 3 to 5 orbs in the sky at the same time. Easily 200 to 300. That's insane. That's incredible. That's a miracle, really, that things like that happen. And you're seeing in real time what the beings told us would happen. And in episode 0 or 1, I don't know, I haven't listened to them in about 4 years, but in episode 0 or episode 1, I'm pretty sure it was 0, I verbatim say that this is a meta documentary project and we are documenting the awakening of the world. And I can't deny that something crazy is happening. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed our story. There's a lot more to it than that. It's really hard to condense into a short period of time. I mean, it's the last 18, almost 19 years of my life. So, you know, it's easy to, you know, let a lot of the details not really shine through, just because, you know, in an hour I can't tell you 19 years, right? So I tried to sort of hit a lot of the points that were really important to me, and it would take me another 19 years to tell you every other thing, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed the little series we just did. I really wanted to just sort of talk about, you know, what actually happened to us and why we're doing this. We've not really addressed that in a linear fashion on our story. We didn't come out the gate swinging and tell our story. I was just like, look, if they're tuning into our show, they're probably already going to know it. We'll just move past that, and someday in the future, I want to tell it. Well, today is that day, so thank you for listening. Also, if you want to support the show, check out our website, bledsoesaidso.com. That's where you can find our merch, all of our links to social media sites, our YouTube, Spotify, Apple, our Patreon, and our bios, things like that. So check out bledsoesaidso.com, and it basically can direct you to everything Bledsoe Said So. Check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/bledsoesaidso, if you want to directly support the show. It's not easy for us to ask for financial contributions, but the reality is we're on a mission to awaken as many people as possible. And you know, this really is a labor of love. It's not only fun for us, but it is a very serious mission that Alex and I really put a lot of heart into, to try to reach people and to try to touch people's lives with information that is profound and in my opinion, truly life-changing. So if you want to support the show, we would be very grateful, and it helps us to continue to do this. So check out our Patreon. We have a couple tiers on there, and they have different packages on how you can be a part of the show. So at the $5 tier, you can join our private mothership Discord community for $5 a month, right? And there's like 800 awesome people in there. There's events being hosted by our mod team, where they have chats and hangouts every week. And once a month, Alex and I hop in and do chats. And we're also interacting in there. There's like literally 800 people in there just vibing and hanging out. And they're talking about like-minded things, like their experiences with the supernatural, out-of-body experiences, favorite anime, everything under the sun. It's just a really amazing like-minded community of people, and we never had any clue that it would turn into what it is today. We just were like, yeah, it'd be cool to have a Discord, and it's just blown up, and it's turned into this amazing thing. You also have access to another show that we do called Full Disclosure, that's hosted by me, and it's a video diary put out once weekly, where I just talk about my innermost thoughts and feelings, what's in my head that week, and really go deep on things in a way that is not necessarily fitting the format of having topics on a main show, right? So it's very cathartic for me, and it's an outlet to go deep on basically whatever I want, right? For better or for worse. If I'm happy or sad, whatever. You get it exactly as it comes that week. And you get the show 2 days early at that $5 tier. And then check out our Instagram if you want to stay current with everything that we're doing. So we put out our posts, our clips of the show. We, put our event schedules on there. So if we have upcoming events, people are always like, when is your next Skywatch? When is your next Skywatch? Check our Instagram. Anything that we're ever doing as a team, it's always on our Instagram. I don't have an Instagram. Sorry. It's on our Instagram. For now, it's what works for us, and it's what we're doing, and we post our things on Instagram. So if you really want to know, if you really want to be there at the Skywatches, follow Bledsoe Said So on Instagram. Or if we're doing festivals, or if we're doing appearances, or if we're doing conferences or anything like that, it's all on our Instagram at Bledsoe Said So. And Alex, do you have any thoughts before we close out?
Nope, I'm good. Good job.
Did I miss anything?
Don't think so.
Thank you. Good job to you too. We love you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this. And I'm just excited for the future of the show. It feels like a renewal. I can't speak for you, Alex, but I think you would agree. Do you want to comment on how you feel about that? I feel like I have to beg you for your attention.
No, I'd agree. I just don't, I don't have anything more to add, and I completely agree with what you're saying, and I'll let you speak for me in this instance.
All right, I'll speak for you then. It feels like a renewal. It feels really good, really positive. I like this direction that we're going in, where we're just really shooting from the heart and not only being candid, but going deeper. And we have some topics coming up that we discussed that I'm actually really excited to talk about. And, I'm living the dream. I'm in a position to where I can sit here and I can talk to a camera and blast it out to thousands of people and make a difference in the world. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. Sometimes I can't quite process what's happening. And then I get down on myself because I'm trapped in my room here, and it's just me and Alex, and we're scratching our heads like, are we making a difference in the world? Are we doing anything, worthwhile for humanity? Are we helping people? Are we changing lives? And we get down on ourselves and we beat ourselves up because, this episode didn't do as good this week. And then we go to festivals and there's 400 people, and they're telling us, tears streaming down their face, that this changed their lives. I had someone tell me the other day at Riverfest, which just was this weekend, right? We're only days after that currently at the time of recording this. Someone hugged me and was crying and said, if it wasn't for your show, I wouldn't be here today. And I'm just like, what a responsibility we have. We cannot stop this. We have to keep doing this. Have to keep going. People depend on this. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. This is for people, right? And I used to think, people don't want to hear me. I'm just like, I'm getting out of the way. I don't care. I just think that for whatever reason, I just feel compelled in my gut that I've got to keep doing this. And sometimes I feel like I'm beating my head against a wall and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just being honest here. I'm just being candid, right? I'm just nothing to hide. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Am I putting too much on myself? And then meeting people and hugging them and seeing them face to face, I'm reminded that's why we're doing this. That's why the lady wanted us to do this. Because when people hear this information, when people hear about the angels, the goddess, how these beings change people, heal them, it transforms people's lives. It causes spiritual awakenings in people to come face to face with proof of the invisible spiritual world. There has never been a time in humanity before like the last 20 years or so, really, where we had cameras and massive witnesses with cameras and scientific equipment and getting like all this data to actually have quantifiable evidence of dimensional supernatural beings. Being presented with that evidence changes people. Hearing the story, the narrative, understanding the level that these beings interact with us, with humanity. You know what I mean? Their intentions, all of it. Hearing this story is a rabbit hole that takes people down this incredible journey of deconstructing their nihilistic, negative belief system. And they come out on the other side and they realize God is real. And because God is real, and the narrative that comes along with that, I'm a divine being. I'm sacred. God is sacred. The world is sacred. My neighbors, my brothers and sisters are sacred. Sacred, right? Sacred. They're sacred. Not sacred. They're sacred, right? So hearing this changes people, and they know that life, it's going to be okay. Like it can be totally okay. That there are forces that help us, that intervene on our behalf when we ask. It changes everything. It's I could keep going. I could keep going and going and going and going and going, right? But I'm not always reminded of that. So anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm very lucky to be able to do this. I really hope that it, is something that you guys enjoy, and thank you very much for supporting us and doing this and listening. But really the thing that I wish that people would do the most is that they would go and they would tell others, that you would, in the same way we have had experiences and come to this knowledge, and we have made it our mission to tell as many people as possible. Tell people about it. Be a lighthouse for other people who are freaking out that they think it's the end of the world. Don't even need to go into that. But everybody right now, just 2 weeks ago, people thought it was the rapture. September 23rd, they thought it was the rapture, right? It's upside down. People think the world is ending. Literally. It's crazy out there, bro. They need to hear this. They need to hear something that's positive and is gives them hope and helps them have something to look forward to in the future. Because a positive mental outlook is how you manifest a better future. Well, if you're a nihilist, you're probably not going to have a positive mental outlook, So anyway, I'm going to stop ranting in circles here. Thank you guys very much. We love you. We'll see you next week. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing this information with others. Thank you for being kind to us and just saying the most lovely, wonderful things in the comments. I try not to, but unfortunately I do read them. So thank you for everyone who's ever been kind to us and supported us in this mission, and we'll see you next week.